So let me introduce to Aarti Sahu. She is a software engineer by profession who takes equal interest in artificial intelligence and emotional intelligence and has a keen interest in studying human behavior. She is a technical trainer, an ICF certified emotional intelligence coach. She is a Six Sigma Green Belt certified professional, and she believes that perfection is merely a perception and hence a myth. She strongly believes in the mantra of coach thyself and wants to help individuals with the same concept that they can then self coach themselves. So without further ado, let me hand the session over to Aarti Sahu, and I'm sure this is going to be yet another wonderful session as a part of the Dream, Believe, Achieve initiative by AD's coaching. So over to you, Aarti, for emotional intelligence getting into the roots, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Avinash, for the lovely introduction. It feels great to be here, and I'm grateful that you invited me. Before I begin, I would like to thank each and every participant and also applaud all the participants who have shown their commitment by being a part of this series. All the techniques that we are learning here will definitely help us take our lives to the next level. And those of you are already a part of the group and who know Avinash, and I am sure they must be having a great time because he's one of the best coaches whom I have ever known. So I hope we have a wonderful discussion ahead. So let me just share my screen. Is the screen visible, the PPT?
Yes, we are able to see it, Aarti.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so the topic that I will be covering today is emotional intelligence. So we'll be starting with why emotional intelligence is an important skill, especially in the current times, and the different components of EI, and two of its components, we will be covering that in detail. So let me start. So on the screen, you can see there are two reports. The one on the left-hand side is the Future of Jobs report by the World Economic Forum, and the one on the right is a report by LinkedIn Learning. So if you check the report by the World Economic Forum, that they are the top 10 skills which are the future workspace skills in 2020, and emotional intelligence stands at the sixth. And if you check the list in 2015, emotional intelligence didn't even feature in the list. Coming to the LinkedIn report, the top 5 soft skills that we require, and I personally believe that soft skills are the power skills that help us navigate through the challenges in our workplaces or life in general as well. So, emotional intelligence stands at the fifth position. And it is a newly added, it's a new addition in the 2019 report of LinkedIn Learning, where the skills companies require the most. Emotional intelligence was not there. So why is it that organizations have started to realize the importance of EI, especially in the current times? So organizations these days are talking about something known as self-driven and purpose-driven organizations. So until and unless each and every employee of the organization is not aligned with his or her own passion or purpose, it will never be possible to achieve a truly 100% self-driven, purpose-driven organizations. We also have organizations following something known as the agile culture, and we know that it is more than a process change, it is a mindset change in its true sense. And so there is also something known as design thinking, which is about designing a process, designing an idea and innovation in such a way that the core of the process is empathizing with the target user or the end. So all the things that I mentioned, mindset change, driven, all these are somewhere related to one or more components of EI, which is why EI is a necessary skill, which the reports also and people in general in practical also we realize that it is something which is the need of the hour. So businesses these days say that we are currently living in something known as a VUCA world. where V stands for volatility because problems are changing at an ever faster rate than before. It is uncertain, things are uncertain. So, especially if we look around during the COVID-19 pandemic, be it a developing country or a developed country, and organization, be it an SME or an MNC, or the richest or the smartest of the leaders, today do not have absolute answers to how things are going to transform. We all know that things are going to get transformed, but how, none of us have the answers. And this uncertainty, this complexity, so for problems are complex, one size fits all, that approach is not going to work. And ambiguity, again, there are so many possibilities, and we do not have historical forecast and past data to rely on, so that we can think that, okay, this will help me provide better insights. So that is why decision making is tough. So this is going to be a new normal. And they say that the COVID-19 pandemic is the beginning of a VUCA world. And 2020 marks the beginning of a new decade. And experts say that we are going to witness something known as a behavioral disaster wave. So, how do we protect ourselves from being a victim of this behavioral disaster wave? So, they say that you need a VUCA leadership to counter a VUCA environment. So, for volatility, we need a visionary leadership. For uncertainty, we need in depth understanding of the root cause of the problem. So, and complexity, we need more clarity, so that we are able to do the root cause analysis, the cost benefit analysis, and take wise decisions. Again, ambiguity, you need to be agile. We need agility in the sense that the ability to break down complex problems into simpler ones, and being able to forecast even when things aren't very clear, which definitely requires in-depth understanding. So, be it supply chain, inventory management, marketing, sales, everything is going to change. So the other day I was reading an article. It was about how marketing is going to change. So marketing strategists are not looking at something known as consumer insights. They are looking at human insights, which is more of considering the humans, the individuals, the consumers' entire life experience, and that is why human experience, the human insights, the experience of the individual as a whole, and how the experience influences decision making, how it influences how the consumer or the human chooses the brand. So that is about human insights, and they have something known as emotional listening plan in place. So this makes us realize that EI is definitely that we need something. So there is something known as a benchmark report, which was published by the Executive Development Associates that you can see in the screen. And they have provided a solution to this VUCA world. And they have listed down 7 competencies which will help us manage and adapt to this VUCA world. And you can see they are metacognition, attentional control, sense making, intuition, problem solving, adaptability, and communication. So metacognition is the first one, and it is something that which we will be covering in the session today. And in general also, if you see, if you reflect upon, these competencies are somewhere related to one or more core areas of EI. And even before reports could say, we ourselves have started realizing this fact that we need to change something in our lives. So when I was in school, I was taught that the difference between humans and machines is that a machine cannot take decisions. But we all know now that with artificial intelligence and machine learning coming up, things have changed. It is not the case. So we have Siri and Cortana who can give us information literally at our fingertips. We have robots getting citizenship. And it won't be surprising if tomorrow we find out that employee ID so and so in our organization is not a human but a bot. So even though we have designed great machines, great softwares, we have been the mastermind of like great softwares that we are using today, but still, do our own minds listen to our commands as quickly? as the way we have designed our machines. Like how much time does it take for us to get rid of that one single addiction which is taking us away from our goals, and we realize that, but still we are not able to bring out that change. And we are already into almost the 6th month, so 5th month is almost over, and 6th month of 2020, but still there are so many tasks that are there on our to-do list but still pending. So why is that we are not able to discipline our own mind? And we really need to stop, think and reflect, and need to learn this art of disciplining our inner child, which is our mind, because in case we fail to do so, we will not be able to reach our true potential. And let me tell you this thing by experience and knowledge both, that potential unrealized turns into pain. So, in order to protect ourselves from this behavioral disaster, from this pain, I think we should start thinking of the skill of emotional intelligence, mastering it, and any which ways the artificial intelligence, the intelligence is artificial, it is something we have imparted to it, and the machine is still learning. So, I personally believe that before Siri, Alexa, and Cortana beat us in that too, let us master the skill of emotional intelligence. So coming to emotional intelligence, so what you see on the screen is the pyramid of emotional intelligence, wherein the base is that of self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. So the thing at the base, which is self-awareness, and the thing at the surface, which is relationship management, these are most important core areas of EI, in the sense that these are the two areas wherein you get signal that you need to change something. So there is a feeling from within yourself that you think that I need to change something, I need to do something so that I am able to master myself and direct my life in the direction I want. Or what may happen is, in your relationships from the people around you, you feel that you are not able to manage those relationships, they are not going the way you expect them to be, or you feel that intention and impact in your relationship are not in sync. You are trying to say something, but the other person perceives it in some other way, and then it goes in a totally different manner which you never expected. So these are the two areas that we will be covering, and there will be activities as well, so it will be quite engaging. So coming to the definition of emotional intelligence is the practice of identifying and managing one's own emotions and influencing the emotions of others. So first thing, EI is a practice. It comes gradually and not instantaneously. It's like you sow the seed, you water it, you put compost, and you wait patiently. You do it, you put all your hard work and put all the efforts, and then one day it grows into a tree. So it comes with practice. It doesn't happen in a jiffy. Secondly, it is about managing one's own emotions. So this is something I really want to draw each and every participant's attention to, that we need to manage our emotions. We often see people using the word control. So what I'll do is I'll make two set of statements, and I want each and every one to reflect upon how different words make different words. So the first statement I say is, I need to control my weight. I need to manage my weight. I need to control my finances, my expenses. I need to manage my finances or my expenses. I need to control my mind, and I need to manage my mind. If you notice, when you use the word control, there is a sense of urgency. There is a sense that there is something which is beyond my scope. And when you use the word manage, it is about taking charge, where control is about dictating a behavior. Manage is about that you are responsible and you have to take charge of it. So we need not control our emotions, we need not control our minds, we need to manage it so that it is liberated. Our mind is the most beautiful gift, our intelligence is the most beautiful gift bestowed upon to mankind, and it is not something that is to be controlled. It is to be managed and liberated so that we can live our true potential. And this is what emotional intelligence teaches us. Then the next part of the definition says it is about influencing the emotions of others. Again, it is not changing the emotions of others. Let me tell you, all of us know, we are learning NLP as well. We know that people look at the world through their own perspectives, and whatever they do, there is a positive intention for everything. So we cannot really change the emotions of people around us. We can only influence them so that they consider ourselves as their role model and they start to change. So where your degree or your qualification is there on paper, your leadership is exhibited in your behavior, and people should want to follow you because they want to and not because they have to. And it's only possible when you try to influence by being the embodiment of the facts you share first in yourself, and not commanding and trying to change the people around you. Yeah, so the four components with respect to the personal components and the social competence, what you see is the self awareness in yourself. When you notice, when you recognize, when you identify, that is your self awareness. And when you notice things around you, in people around you, in things around you, that is your social awareness. And how you put this information into use, how you apply this information or this knowledge or wisdom, that is about management. So again, it's self management and relationship management. So it's all about balance. So in the sense, so this is a statement that emotional intelligence is all about balance. So if there is one thing which differentiates you from the person you were 5 years back, and the person you are today, and the person you will be after 5 years, or let's take a smaller time frame, you were the person you were 1 year before today, and the person you will be after a year. So the only thing which differentiates you, the only thing which makes you the person you are today, is decisions. The decisions that you have taken in your life has made the person you are today. And if I were to ask you, do you always take rational decisions, or do you always take decisions on the influence of your emotion? Answer is most probably no. Most of the times, our decisions are a combination of rationality and the inputs from our emotional brain. And emotional intelligence is just this. Emotional intelligence is striking the right balance. It is the juncture of emotion and cognition. So as you can see in the image, there is this rational mind and the emotion mind, and the mutually exclusive part is the wise mind. So a wise mind is one who takes data from both the brains and is able to apply them. There is no rejection for any data that is coming from either of the brains. So if I were to give you an example, let's say you are sleeping, and when you wake up in the morning, your rational mind says that you need to get up, you have a lot of pending tasks today, you have to complete them. Your emotional mind will like the comfort of the bed and will say, I'm bored of this monotonous life, I want to sleep, I don't want to get up. What your wise mind will do in that case is, your wise mind will say, I can be bored and still get up, I can be bored and still get up and start doing the task. I will do something differently today so that I can break the monotony. Okay, so you are accepting the rational mind's data as well. Or for example, you get up in the morning, you're sleeping, and you want to get up, and you say that you should get up today, you need to hit the gym. But your emotional mind will again like the comfort of the bed and the pillow and the bed sheet, and will say that I am bored, I so the like going to the gym every day stresses me out. While your wise mind will say that I can be stressed and still hit the gym, maybe even if after the workout I might feel better. So what you are trying to do here is, you are accepting the emotion from the rational mind, the data from the rational mind, and you are also applying what your sorry you are applying what your rational mind said, and you are also accepting the data from the emotional mind. So this is basically trying to rationalize your emotion, which is what emotional intelligence teaches about. In the image also, you can see it is a balance between the emotional brain and the rational brain.
I think,
So moving ahead. Yeah.
Aarti, mostly the challenge is, I mean, while we conceptually
Mhm.
understand that, well,
Yeah.
rational mind and the emotional mind, just getting
Yeah.
into that wise mind is
Yeah.
sometimes a bit of a challenge because, as you said with the example, that when we get up in the morning, while the rational mind would say, yes, you have to get up and hit the gym, while the emotional
Mhm.
mind would say, you have to go back to sleep or just rest for more time to get into that mode of wise mind. How does, I mean, what's the trick to get that balance? Because
Mhm.
while we understand the concept, it's important that
Mhm.
we get that balance right, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a very great question, Avinash. So yeah, that is something we also, all the concepts that I'm going to share is something probably all of you must be knowing. But the challenge is being able to wisely do those things, be getting data from the rational mind as well as the emotional mind, but being able to apply it. So what really happens is, the first thing is that we try to reject the thoughts that come from the emotional mind. And the second important thing is, there's something known as metacognition, which was there and which we will be seeing, which is about the emotions that we have about our emotions, or feelings about our own emotions. And most of our emotional problems, the root cause is the feelings of this emotion. Once we start accepting them and then start applying, so we need not be very strict and stern with ourselves, but we need to understand that our mind is like our child. Like for example, let's say you have a child coming to you, and your child, so let's say your own child comes to you and asks for a chocolate, and you know that your child is suffering through a toothache. So chocolates is something you shouldn't give. But so you have a few options. One is, you feel you are busy and the child will start throwing tantrums, and then you just give the chocolate. Or one thing is, you try to explain to the child does not listen, you slap the child, and then you are done with it. Third thing is, you sit with your child, you explain the consequences, you probably give some motivation as well. The motivation that when you get rid of this toothache, we will have more chocolates, probably we'll have ice creams, we'll do something else which is even better. That is the time when your child will understand. So in the three example cases that I mentioned, first case, you were busy and you gave the child a chocolate. What happened? Your time was saved, you were busy doing something, you did not give that much attention to the child, but the child ate the chocolate, which is not good. In the second case, you were a bit more patient, you tried to explain to the child, but what happened? You did not have that much patience to make your child understand, and you slapped. The child was quiet, he did not ask for a chocolate, but somewhere your relationship was disturbed. In the third case, you give time, probably 30 minutes, 40 minutes, for your child to explain to the child the consequences of having a chocolate and how it will affect his health. And after some time, definitely the child will understand. Same is the case with our own mind. We are not supposed to give in the gratifications. Probably our emotional mind is trying to tell that you have to do this, or we are not supposed to, like that. In that case, the example, you are hitting the child. But when we have negative self talks, when we kind of mentally abuse ourselves, that is also something we should not do. The third thing is, sit with your child, accept it, create the amount of self love, and then create the kind of behaviors you want. And so yeah, so that is how. First is, you need to give your child, your inner child, which is your mind, the time and space it requires for healing, and you need to listen to it. Imagine someone coming to you and you say, I'm busy, I don't have time. So that is what we do. And when we have some disturbing thoughts, we say, I have a lot of time, I'll attend to it later. Ignoring is not the solution, especially in case of self discovery and self creation. We need to address those thoughts and then apply our knowledge so that it becomes wisdom and we become wise.
Thank you so much, Aarti, for that.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Avinash, for the question. So I'll move ahead. So
Uh,
any
just
emotionally
just before we
yeah,
move, Aarti,
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
is others have any question? Please feel free to ask Aarti, just to make sure that we are all on the same page. Any questions so far? If you have any questions, also feel free to put it in the chat so that we can answer as we go forward. Go ahead, Aarti, please.
Okay, fine. Thank you. So an emotionally intelligent person, before anything else, is definitely an emotionally literate person. So emotional literacy is the ability to express your feelings with specific words. You should be able to identify your emotion, and you should be able to label that emotion or name that emotion. In coaching, we call it as you name it to tame it. So you identify what you are going through, you name that emotion, you claim that emotion, in the sense you accept that emotion, as I told you, you do not reject it, you address it, and then you tame it. So, since we are talking about emotional literacy, we will also go a bit deeper and try to understand the difference between emotion and feeling. So, there's this whole cycle which external stimulus and emotion and feeling. So, let us say you're walking on the road and you see a lion coming by. A lion is passing by and you're walking on the road. The moment you see the lion, what happens is, so the lion over here is the external stimulus. Stimulus can also be internal, like our own self-talk. But in this example, we are considering an external stimulus of the lion. The moment you see the lion, our brain takes around 1/4 seconds to identify the trigger, around 1/4 seconds to release the chemicals in our body, which are unconscious physiological responses, which are known as emotions. And these chemicals are not only released in our brains, but also in our bodies. And there is a feedback loop which is formed between our body and our brain. And after this happens, we start cognitively, like consciously processing that thing, that emotion. We start associating a meaning to it and integrating to it. And we say that we create a thought that there is a lion and I need to run in order to save my life. So what happened in our body in terms of physiological, those chemical responses, was emotion, and the cognitive processing that happened, that was feeling. So the feelings are conscious while our emotions are not. So if you look at the actual structure of the brain, how emotions and feelings work, so our emotions are lower level responses produced in the subcortical regions of the brain, which is the amygdala in the limbic system. So you have the subcortex of the brain, there is the emotional arousal center, which is our limbic system, and the amygdala, and emotions are produced over here. We then have our feelings, which are produced in the neocortex. And as I told you, emotions are subconscious while feelings are conscious. And what do emotions do? Emotions are like physiological response to any stimulus, and feelings are expression of emotions. They are after you associate a meaning to it, after you let the emotion soak in. So as I told you, feelings are conscious, and as you can see, it's written that feelings are expression of emotions, and they are based on. So feelings can be different as per a situation. And I would like to give you an example, the same example. So initially, when you saw the lion, you ran away. Now imagine you are in a zoo and you see that the lion is there inside a cage. You look at the lion, 1/4 seconds for the brain to identify the trigger, another 1/4 seconds for probably the emotion to get released. But as soon as this happens, you start consciously cognitively processing the emotion, and you do not run. So this is how our feelings are conscious, and this is how our feelings are conscious and emotions. And physiological responses, they can be measured via brain activity or via blood flow or even through our body language, while feelings cannot be measured. That's why we say that EQ, we measure our brain activity, that we have the electroencephalograph, EEG. We have EQ, we do not have FQ, because it's emotions that can be measured. So while emotions make us human, feelings make us unique, because it's written, right, that it's our own learnings and experiences. So different kinds of context can evoke different kinds of emotions in different people, or else you can also have the same context or the same emotion, but being expressed or perceived differently by different people. So for example, so all these things which I'm sharing about associating meaning and integrating the emotion is part of a branch of neuroscience which is known as neurosemantics. And if you get time, I would really urge you to search about it because it's a very interesting topic. So I was talking about same context and emotions being perceived in a different way. So if you consider the emotion of anger, I personally know people who shout when they are angry, but I also know people who say that, Aarti, when I am angry, I just feel like crying and I just cry. And there are people who do not talk to, like, if they are angry with someone, they will not talk to that person for, let's say, straight 2 3 days. Okay, so I was asked to repeat something. I hope they're talking about the same topic, emotions and feelings.
No, I think it's the neurosemantics that we mentioned. So, Anuradha is
Okay, fine.
asking if you can repeat the name. That's neurosemantics.
Yeah, it's neurosemantics, and it's how, so as I told you, feelings are expression of our emotions. And so it's our feelings that make us unique. And why did I tell you that you need to search this? Because since I told you that feelings are conscious and feelings are our own cognitive processing capabilities, if you really want to change your behaviors, if you really want to direct your behaviors, it is this feeling that you want to change. It is the way you are associating a meaning to it that you need to change.
So,
So
another
it is
question,
neuroscience.
Aarti,
Yeah, sure.
is are feelings not the outcome of emotions? Is the question from one of the participants.
Yes, they are the outcome of emotions. Definitely, they are the outcome of emotions because, so in the example that I gave, the lion example, there was a emotion of fear, and you felt fearful. The feeling was fearful. The emotion and the feeling were related. You felt fearful and you ran away. But the thing is, since it is conscious, you can change it. Like for example, you say that you fear let's say you fear public speaking. So when you go on stage and you see people, so if you go on an empty stage where there are no people out there, you say that you fear stage, but if there is no one, you won't fear, right? So probably the trigger are the people. You fear that how they would judge you and all. So it's a fear emotion. The emotion is of fear. And but then you start realizing that, no, how can I be so fearful? Public speaking is something that I will have to do. I will have to present. I need to be confident. And then you slowly start integrating the emotion in a different way. You start associating and giving it a different meaning. You start making statements cognitively, which are suggestions to your mind, by saying that this is an opportunity for me to learn. And slowly and steadily, the effect of the emotions changes. So as I told you, you have 1/4 seconds for the brain and 1/4 seconds for the emotions to get released. As you can see in the slide, the first point, emotions are chemicals released throughout the body that last about 6 seconds. So emotions are there in our body for only a short span of time, but the meaning that we associate to it stays with us for a longer time because they are physical and mental sensations both. So emotions and feelings. So if feelings are emotions of outcome, yes, but you can consciously and cognitively change the way you feel regarding the same emotion. So that is something in our hands, and that is something we should try to change if we want to direct our behaviors in a different way. Does that answer your question, Anuradha?
Yeah, it was from Abhay. So, hopefully, Abhay,
Okay, sorry.
that is
Yeah,
answered.
but
Yes, and I think, as you rightly mentioned, that when
yeah.
with the 6 seconds of the chemical release,
Mm.
self-talk is a very important aspect, and something that we also cover in NLP is to make
Mm.
sure that within that period when the emotions are generated, if the self-talk is good enough to control those feelings, I think a humongous change can be possible in our everyday life. And as you gave me the example of public speaking, um, the moment you feel that jitter of going and being afraid of public speaking, the self talk can control those kind of emotions and then control the feelings that follow the emotions. And I think this is something that we all have to learn, because as I always say, that 90% of the times the talk is with ourselves more than others. And so making sure that that's the positive self-talk makes a huge amount of difference, isn't it, Arti?
Yeah, definitely. That was a great point, Avinash, that 90% of our times there is self talk. And even so glad that you shared it with us. And Like every one of us, we always try to change things outside, we try to change our words outside. But if now having this fact that 90% of the communication goes on inside, we'll definitely work on that, and then we will see things change around us and within us, definitely. So thank you for that, Avinash. And so coming back to the point of feeling, so they are cognitively saturated emotion chemicals, like as I told you, when you let the emotions soak in. And moods are a combination of emotions and feelings which happen for a prolonged duration, and they are moods. So it's just a matter of time. Emotions, feelings, and moods, all these three are just a matter of time. And emotional literacy will definitely include a deeper understanding of these three. So I hope it is clear now. The second point under emotions says that emotions continuously regulate every living cell to adapt to threats and opportunities. They provide emotional data essential for our own functioning. So why is it important? Because we generally try to ignore our emotions, but our emotions are like our own wisdom compass. If we know how to strike the correct balance, be wise, which a few of the things how to deal with that we will be learning. Self-talk, which Avinash pointed out, is definitely a very effective tool to strike a balance between both the brains. So the point over here is that emotions help us to regulate every living cell. It is not something that we should be scared of, or it is not something that should be ignored. It is only when you are able to use these emotions optimally that you become an emotionally intelligent person and are able to, you'll be able to probably adapt to this VUCA world in a better way. And so as written, feelings are our responses to the emotional data. And yeah, so it was all about emotions, feelings, and moods. And the takeaway from these three slides is that our feelings are our cognitive processing, and it is something in our hands. And through practice, through self talk, through affirmations, through dealing with negative self perception, these feelings can be changed, and hence our experiences and behaviors. So we talked about changing our feelings so that we can change our experiences. But how do we achieve that? So there is something known as an emotional audit, and it is to be done when you are in a context. Like for example, in any uncomfortable situation. So when I'm sharing this, what you can do is try to recollect any situation in your life, especially in the last 3 months. Any recent one would do, and just try to think of this a context wherein you wanted to change your response in that context. You wanted to do something, your intention was different, but the impact turned out to be different, and you would like to change that behavior. So try to recollect such a situation. Once you are able to recollect the situation, what you're supposed to do is, so the first point is know yourself, clearly seeing what you feel and do. So remember that context and try to answer three questions that I asked. First is, what were you thinking? What were your thoughts in that situation? Next is, what were you feeling? So there were some thoughts, and what were the feelings around because of those thoughts? And your own emotions come in your way. So since you have recollected this context, that means definitely there was some behavior of yours that you wanted to change, a response of yours that you wanted to, and that is why you have this context now. So how did your emotions come in your way? Try to answer that question. Once you have answers to these three questions, you choose yourself in the sense, and how can I do it differently? You choose yourself doing what you mean to do instead of reacting on autopilot. These competencies allow you to proactively respond, answering these two questions: what do I want to do differently, and how do I do it? You can even write the questions which I'm saying, so that later on you can refer to it, and when you are in the context you can definitely do this. Once all these four questions are answered, at last yourself, the last point, doing it for a reason. So for example, if you have recollected a context of an argument, you give yourself a purpose, that why do you want to change this behavior. Probably because you realize that winning in the argument or being the right person in the argument is not important, but the relationship and my mental peace matters more. So give the how becomes easier. So what, how, and why. I would the questions again for those people who want to note it down. And it is something you do when you are in an uncomfortable context and wherein you want to change those feelings around those emotions going inside you or around you. So the first question is, what were you thinking? So when you are in it, you were in the present tense, like what are you thinking? What are you feeling? Yeah, thank you, Avinash, for putting it in the chat. So what are you thinking? What are you feeling? How are your own emotions coming in your way? What do you want now? What do you want now? And how do you want to achieve that? How are you going to achieve that? Like probably not arguing, probably accepting, probably listening to the other person, probably letting go the ego. So what and how are you going to achieve that? And at last, why do you want to do that? Why do you want to modify this behavior? When you have the why in front of you, the how definitely becomes easier. So that brings us to an end of emotional literacy.
One question from a participant is that
Yeah,
are
sure.
emotions a part of the subconscious mind or a part of the conscious mind, Aarti?
They are a part of our subconscious mind. They are non-conscious physiological responses, as you can see in the
Yes.
line of emotions, in the column of emotions, subconscious, and it is non-conscious changes of the somatic state. It is non-conscious.
Right.
You have a primary emotion and a secondary feeling.
Okay.
That's the cycle.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. So self-awareness is the core of EI, the crux of EI, and the essence of EI, one of the most important tools for self-development and self-mastery. So I would like to share one incident over here. It is something that happened with me when I was around 8 or 9 years of old. So the thing was that our teacher, a school teacher, gave us an activity. She gave us a list of seeds that we need to grow. She told us to sow the seeds, grow the plant, and bring the plant to school after around a month. And it was our environmental studies activity, and we were supposed to be graded on that. So from the list, I had a friend, Seema, and my friend Seema and I decided to choose mustard seeds from the list our teacher had given us. So I came back home and I told my mom about this activity. She immediately gave me a pot full of mud. She took some mustard seeds, she put them in the soil, and she covered the seeds with the soil. And she told me that you need to water this plant every single day. And I said, yes, I'll do that. So I started watering the plant, and after a few days, I saw that there were small little branches and tiny little leaves coming up, and it was like seeing my own baby grow. And I still remember that I had named that plant as Pratham, because Pratham means first in Hindi. So it was marking the first plant that I had ever grown. So I was really happy and excited about it, and I used to like water it religiously every single day. After around 10-15 days, I noticed that the little branches of the mustard plant had started to droop down, and the leaves were also losing their shine. Worried about my plant's growth, or rather Pratham's growth, and obviously my EVS grade, I went to my mom and asked her, like, what is the reason? Why is my plant become like that? So she came back and she asked me that if I'm watering it every day. And I said that I'm watering it every single day without fail. So she thought for a while and she asked me, how are you watering the plant? And I brought the mug. from the kitchen, and I showed her that I take this mug, I pour the water inside the mug, and I make sure that each and every leaf of this plant is drenched in water. So she laughed. My mom laughed and she told me that, Aarti, that is not the correct way of watering a plant. And I was like, is there any correct way of watering a plant? I didn't know. So she told me that you are supposed to water the roots of a plant and not the leaves. So what I had done was I was actually watering the leaves, and since the pot was very small, the leaves were actually dropping out. They were the bunch, the crown of the leaves are actually outside. And since I was only watering the leaves, the water couldn't seep into the root. And due to that, things were good for the initial few days. But later on, since there was no water, my plant started drooping and the leaves had started drying. So I went to my friend Seema and asked her, like, how does she water? And she said that she waters them at the root. And I also noticed that Seema had used a thread around the little branches of the mustard plant. And she told me so that the plant could stand straight, she had used the thread. That day, I learned two lessons. First is you are supposed to water the roots of the plant. Second, if you want to stand straight, you need some support system. So, reflecting upon this incident, that time the 9-year-old me did not know the correct way of watering a plant. But if we see, aren't we also doing the same things today? The 19-year-old teenager, or the 29-year-old young adult, or the 59-year-old to be retired person, all of us are uh, so much more entangled in the fruits, in the leaves, in the externalities of position, power, fame, that we have forgotten to nourish our roots of love, care, and compassion. And especially in the pandemic times, we have started to realize how important it is to nourish the roots. So we talk about gratitude. Gratitude is vitamin for the soul. We should be grateful. If we really want to wake up happy in our mornings, I say that you should be grateful when you go to sleep. But uh, it's unfortunate that our ancestors used to worship trees, plants, animals, every entity which gave them something, and that was their gratitude. But these days, we need to think. We need coaches to come and tell us that you need to be grateful. It is definitely something that we need to do. But I would urge you to go one step ahead by being generous. So when I make statements like, I am grateful for my body, I love each and every cell, muscle, tendon, fiber in my body. But am I generous enough to give my body that 1 hour or at least 30 minutes of exercise that it deserves? So I would make a statement that I'm grateful for the beautiful mind that I have. I'm such an intelligent person. I'm happy. I'm grateful for it. But am I generous enough to give my mind the 30 minutes of meditation or affirmation or visualization or a 5 minutes positive self talk that it deserves? So being grateful and not generous is like that supervisor. It's on a lighter note, but being like that supervisor who says that I'm very grateful that you are a part of my team and appreciates you in front of everyone, probably sends you a formal appreciation email, but when the appraisal season is around, doesn't you don't end up with a very good grade. So generosity is gratitude in action. And I would really urge you that we need to start being generous towards our own mind by definitely using techniques of positive self talk and a lot of other things. But it is something that we need to start doing so that we are able to strike the correct balance of uh, and use the data of our rational mind and our emotional mind both. Because what is happening currently is, as I told you, emotional intelligence is all about balance. But in the current situation, especially before the pandemic, now we have started to realize it and are doing things differently. But we have forgotten to live our lives while earning our livelihoods. We are living our professional lives and roles more often than before, and especially now that work from home is the new normal. Your home and your office is probably separated by a single wall. So you are a manager at workplace and you are a parent at home, so you cannot be commanding over here and empathic over, like, you know, you need to be able to differentiate like what roles you have to play where. So right now it is like we are living our professional lives and roles, and we have to earn that one single extra vacation. We have to earn that 1 hour appointment with our own selves, and we have to think about gratitude and gratefulness. This reminds me of a recent example, a situation, an incident which I read. So there was one 93-year-old COVID-19 patient from Italy. And while he was discharged from the hospital, the nurse gave him a bill. And looking at the bill, this man, this 93-year-old man who had won the battle against COVID, he had tears in his eyes. And the medical staff asked him, like, why are you crying? Don't you have the money? He said, I am a businessman and I have plenty of money. And the bill said 5,000 per hour for a ventilator. And he said, I have plenty of money. I am a businessman, but I'm thinking, how much do I pay to the Almighty who has given me this breath free, this oxygen free of cost? So how do I repay the Almighty? So we have forgotten to hear the rhythm of our heartbeats and the music of our breaths. So it is something that we need to get back to, and hence this skill of emotional intelligence, this root of self-awareness will definitely help us in achieving this outcome. So this takes me to the next point, which is something known as the I complex. So these statements that you see on the screen, one is superiority. We have heard of this term, superiority complex and inferiority complex. So superiority is a feeling that you're the best person in the room and you know everything. The delusion of being grand. And inferiority is suffering from an over modest self-regard, a feeling that you are not enough, and the delusion of being insignificant. But there is a different space altogether within us, and trust me, we have operated from this space, which is known as the interiority. And it is the only space where there is no comparison and no competition. If I were to tell you to name that one person, so we have 7-8 billion people on the planet right now. If we have that one single person who is exactly like you, will you be able to name it? No. That's because we are unique. And unlike superiority and inferiority complex, interiority, the core space of interiority is simple, it is enriching, and it is empowering. Correctly, as one of our participants has said, that we needed a virus to make us realize about our potential. But I would like also to add, thank you for bringing that point. I would also like to add that if an invisible virus can shake the world, then our thoughts, which aren't visible, they are just energy. Our thoughts, which are metaphysical, yes, they also can, like a faith on our own selves that we can also change the world. So we have now started to realize the power of the invisible. So talking about interiority again, so as I told you, there was a time when we operated from the space of interiority. So let's say you go to a classroom of 3-4-year-olds and all toddlers sitting, and you ask a question, who is the strongest in the class? More than 50% of the kids will raise their hands. Fast forward a few years and you go to a classroom of around 7-8-year-olds, and you would ask us the same question, who is the strongest in the class? And the hands raised will be less. And you will might also notice that someone will stand up and say, Rohit is the strongest in the class. This is because when we start growing, we start looking at benchmarks, we start developing perception about ourselves. That comparison factor comes in. In short, when we start growing up, we become less good at being ourselves. There is a difference between being, observing, and then becoming, and then doing. It is more of having and doing, and we have really lost that being and that core space of interiority. So once we start operating from this core space of interiority, managing ourselves, our emotions, and our relationships definitely helps. Vinash, would you like to add something to it?
No, I'm fine with this. Great. Thank you. Any of the participants, Any questions? Yeah, I think let's move on with it, Aarti.
Yeah, so we will be doing a small activity. We need a paper and a pen for this activity. So basically, you need to draw your own tree of life. So as I told you, I was talking about the roots and the strength, something that I had realized. So you draw a tree, write down your values in the roots, your supporting resources as the ground. The earth is your supporting resources. So you can write your parents' name, your spouse's name, and the roots you mention your values, something which you always abide by. So you can write honesty, trust, your values in the roots. You can write your strengths on the trunk of the tree, and you can write your developments on the leaves of the tree. So I would suggest when you are drawing this tree, take 4 branches. One branch you can name it as work. One branch you can name it as your physical health. One branch you can name it as family, and one branch as your emotional health. And just start writing the developments of that particular branch. So if it's about work, you can write, have a leaf which says, got into my aspirational role. If it's family, then spending more time with family, something that you consider an achievement in that branch.
So we have work, family. What are the other two branches, Aarti?
Physical health and emotional health. So physical health, you can write that started exercising or journaling, or and emotional health you can include whatever you are doing as part of your practice, like it can be affirmation or visualization or meditation, or even 5 minutes short positive self talk.
Correct. And the brand and the main trunk of the tree is stands for our strengths, right?
Yes.
Okay. And the roots have the support resource.
Yeah, roots are the values,
Mm-hmm.
and supporting resource will be the people who support us. I have some samples, this might help.
Yeah, great. Okay, excellent. Right. So I think this requires a little bit of again, um,
Introspection.
yes, introspection. And
Mhm.
what we can do is we, of course, a recording will be shared, and I think
Yeah.
it's a good idea to just have the skeleton drawn, and then
Yeah.
we introspect. And after the session is over, probably people may go back, and because there I see a lot of leaves there, and
Okay.
it's a good thing that people spend some time introspecting
Hmm.
and get
Hmm.
this exercise done.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, as Avinash said, the recording will also be shared. You can refer to this slide and start filling your own tree of life. And probably what you can also do is you can write today's date and draw your tree of life. And you can set a goal, 6 months, 1 year, or probably 5 years, whatever time you are comfortable. And draw the tree of life you would want it to look like after that time. After 6 months, you want so and so development in so and so branch. So when you have both the trees, and write that date as well. So if it's 1 year, then you can write 35 2021 in the next one, and the first one 35 2020. Probably that will help you build a vision statement, and you will be reminded of your purpose.
Yes, and as rightly said by Anuradha, it's our homework. But the idea is that it's important that we do the homework, because
Yeah.
we think in NLP we always talk about the actions and the
Hmm.
importance of taking action. The moment
Hmm.
we see this and we feel that, well, I will be doing it, and after the session
Hmm.
is over, life takes over and we get busy into so many things. But that 5 minutes, that those 10 minutes or so where you really introspect and go through this
Hmm.
exercise will really show you the meaning of the
Hmm.
entire time that you have spent. So the 1 hour, 1.5 hour that we'll be spending together, this particular exercise will really give you an insight into what truly our values are, what our strengths are, and what are we currently focusing on in life. And this
Hmm.
tree of life, if we go back 6 months down the line and look at it on the same day, probably the way I would do it, I would put this tree of life and then put it on Facebook, for example, and it reminds me after
Yeah.
6 months that, well, there is a time to revisit it. And this is something that really helps us. And so my point is, action is important. After we finish this
Yeah.
session, please do take some time and go through this exercise. Yes,
Yeah.
Aarti, let's continue.
Yeah, well said, Avinash. And I truly said actions is something which will really bring about the change. And as I told you, decisions is something which changes us. That decision to open up this PPT or this point again and draw the tree of life, and then sticking to that goal, and repeating and continuous reminders will definitely bring about the change. Yeah.
Yes.
So and as Anuradha was saying that yeah, you could share it on social media and probably tag one of us and your friends as well, whom you want to like keep a check and be accountable for, bringing about that change, whom you can share your progress with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one
So
one thought is, sorry to interrupt, Aarti, but one thought is that, well, this is my tree of life. Why would I want it to share on social media? Why would I want it to share it with others, right? But the importance
correct.
of sharing, what I understand is that the more you share your goals, the more you share your values, the more you share what needs to be seen to the world, the more accountable you are to make sure that you are going to achieve those goals, achieve those kind of objectives. And I think that's an important aspect of sharing, that the more people that know about your goal, the more you feel that accountability towards yourself, and a social accountability that, well, now people know my goals, it's important that I achieve them. So it helps you. So as you said, the supporting resources, when you
Hmm.
share it in the social media, all of them become your supporting resources to make sure
Yeah.
that you achieve your goals. Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah. Thank you, Avinash, for the wonderful insight. Yeah. So, whatever we discussed up till now, especially the Tree of Life activity, it is about the strengths, it is about what's strong. But until and unless we realize what goes wrong on this path of self discovery or self creation, we won't be really able to achieve our goals. And that brings us to the first cognitive readiness competency, which was listed by EDA, which is metacognition, which is nothing but thinking about your own thinking about how do you think. So metacognition, the word meta means on top of or beyond. So a simple example could be when you are trying to do affirmations or visualizations and you create a thought that I'm healthy. And the moment you create this thought, you get a counter thought saying that where are you healthy? Where do you follow healthy lifestyles? You keep on eating junk, you do not exercise, you spend so much time in front of the screen. Where are you healthy? So the second counter thought that comes, that is known as metacognition, and the emotions that are around that, so they are secondary emotions, they are emotions about our own emotions, which is known as meta emotions. And as I discussed before as well, that emotional problems, we say that the problem is because of the feelings about our own feelings. So um, you also must have experienced it sometimes. We have a particular feeling and we start feeling guilty about this feeling. So this guilty feeling is an add-on to the existing feeling. So if we don't have that secondary feeling, probably we'll be able to focus more on the root. But the secondary feeling doesn't really help us and it becomes an additional burden. So for example, you are helpless and you feel angry because of that helplessness. And now you actually have to deal with both these emotions. So this cognitive, metacognitive thoughts, the secondary emotions or the secondary feelings that we have, I call it as the contaminated thinking. And broadly, the causes of these contaminated thinking can be categorized into three categories. One is past experiences, self perception, and cultural beliefs. So, the very first one, past experiences. So, for example, so all these techniques, the three categories of metacognition, these are will help you when you are practicing techniques of NLP, law of attraction, or affirmation, visualization, hypnosis. When you are doing all these things, when you are giving auto suggestions to your mind, but you have secondary counter thoughts, these are ways to deal with those thoughts so that you can truly apply the technique of NLP or law of attraction and you get the results faster because there is no contamination. So we'll be looking at the root cause of this contamination. So the first is past experiences. For example, if I create a statement that I am going to achieve this target of X amount of money this year in business, or I am going to crack this deal with X amount this year. And the moment you create this thought, you have a secondary thought that you have not been able to do it in the past, and because of the COVID-19 situation, this is an impossible thing. So what you need to do over here is, first step is to detach yourself from the thought, to not judge the thought, to look at the thought as an observer, you know. And when you have this thought, what you should try to understand, the thought said that you have not been able to do it in the past. Whenever you have such counter thoughts which are related to the past, I call my past as my wisdom box. I remember I told you your emotions are your wisdom compass. So you need to understand why is it saying that, so what happens is our mind follows something known as the path of least resistance. It fears taking risk, especially our emotional mind, but our rational mind wants to take risks and achieve that outcome. So here you need to be wise. You need to understand where is that coming from. So here you explain to your mind that my past was my past. It is giving me lessons to learn, and life is to be understood backwards and lived forwards. If I do not, like, initiate this business deal because I fear that something might go wrong, or I would not go for this startup that I wanted to start because I fear that it's a big risk, then I might end up living my past again. I am not using my wisdom from the past, and that is not what a wise mind will do. That is not what an emotionally intelligent person will do. So try to detach, try to make use of these emotions. Remember, our emotions are used for our own regulation. They are our compass which guide us. Use it like a compass which will guide you. Use it like a friend who has come to advise you. So try to understand and take a calculated risk, and don't just stop or like crib that the results are not out there even when I'm doing those information, because these are the things that you need to also work on. So, self awareness is the ability to take an honest look at yourself without any attachment to it being right or wrong, good or bad. So, do not judge the past outcome or what you are going to do now as right, wrong, good, bad. Just try to understand. And a self aware person will use the lessons from the mistakes as well as successes and move ahead. You cannot sit and stick to that one point of your past and stop living forward. So that is the point of using the wisdom from your past. So your past, in short, the takeaway from the slide, past is your uh, wisdom box. Then you have the concept of self perception. So self perception is like, when I give you the example that I am a healthy being, and immediately you have a thought that where are you healthy, where are you following healthy lifestyle. So over here again, be an observer, observe those thoughts and listen to those thoughts. Remember, I told you that some friend of yours comes to you and you decide to ignore. You say, I have a lot of time, I don't have time for you. This is not how we treat our inner child. This is not how we manage our inner child. We need to ignore it, address it and not ignore. So when you have these thoughts, negative perception about yourself, I'm not good at this job, just check, be an observer first and listen to those thoughts. Be neutral and not negative. So remember the sky and the clouds thing. The sky is a very vast entity, and on a rainy day, the clouds cover the sky. But are they able to, limit the vastness of the sky or destroy the beauty of the sky? They just come and go. So consider these negative thoughts, self-perception thoughts, as the clouds. They will come and go, but only if you do not judge them, only if you do not get entangled in them. And also you need to look for evidence. So if my mind is saying that, if my emotional mind is saying that where are you healthy, from where is it coming from? And even if it is true, what you can do is you can try to find out one or more areas where that affirmation stands true, wherein you are healthy, and make it a reality, because your thoughts will become your reality. So look for evidence. So self perception, the key takeaway is, first is do not judge it and look for evidence. So it is your evidence box, which if you have evidence, then try to address that. And most of the times, if it's completely your own self knowledge, your over modest self-regard, which is negative, and you do not have any evidence, then just remind yourself that you are not the thoughts, because you are the one thinking them, and you are not even your feelings, because then who is the one who is feeling them? So you are beyond that. You are the sky, and these thoughts are the clouds which you need to let go. And as you can see the thought on the slide as well, you rise above your fears by facing them, not by ignoring them. So you need not ignore, but address, as I said. And you can do this because you are not the fear of the thought or the pain. You are the one looking at it. So consider the example of you are the sky and the thoughts being the clouds, and just let them go. And the third and the last point in this metacognition is the cultural beliefs that we have, which seem to be a hindrance. So we all know that we are a result of nature and nurture. The genes that we get, our genetic makeup is our nature. But the practices that we follow, the values, the traditions, what we learn from our peers, the way we are brought up, our cultural beliefs, the religion we practice, the region we stay, our ethnicity, the languages that we speak, all these are a part of our culture, and culture definitely shapes our personality. So if I were to give you an example, you can have umpteen number of examples where cultural beliefs are a hurdle, but right now it is a gender specific example. So what happens is, we hear people saying that men are not supposed to cry, they are not supposed to be vocal about their feelings. So what happens is, if there is a man who is feeling low and who wants to share it with someone, but this point, this cultural belief that has been a part of his bringing up, something that he has heard, and that is something that has been subconsciously wired into his brain, that he shouldn't be vocal about his feelings or he shouldn't cry, is creating that extra burden of guilt. So if I were to give you one more example, it would be, so I had a friend, and she had a baby, and after 6 months of maternity leave, she came back to office, she joined office. And her relatives and her in-laws started telling her that she is not a responsible mother because she joined office immediately. So my friend was a very career driven girl, and she wanted to balance it out. So imagine for a new mother who is trying to balance the responsibilities of the home, of the office, and her newborn child. She has to take this extra burden that she should be a responsible mother by being, 2 3 years with the child, and she was able to do it. But that extra guilt was the extra burden, and it is something that we need to learn to manage. So we have something known as the cognitive brain behavior loop model. The brain and the culture actually interact with each other subconsciously. It's wired, and our culture contextualizes our behavior. So CC is culturally contextualized. So our culture contextualizes and shapes our brain. And when we encounter situations and contexts, and there is a conflict, what happens is we try to guide and modify our behavior so that we can fit our culture. So CV stands for, CV in the second part, in the below part of the circle, stands for culture voluntary behavior. So in such cases, what you are supposed to do is you need to identify your cultural patterns. First of all, there has to be a recognition and awareness, and you question your beliefs about them. So is it something that is really helping me, or is it a belief that was there and it is not supported by any logic or rationality? And most importantly, trust your intuition. So we all know that any situation, people will always have their opinions and they will keep on saying something. For example, this reminds me of the fact that when we were kids and we were asked to draw something on paper, so suppose if there is a circle or a box, any geometry figure, and if we colored it outside the box, we were told that this is wrong, you should color within the box. And when the same child after 20 years joins the workplace, and the manager will tell him that your proposal is fine, but don't you think you should think out of the box? So the thing is that people will have their opinions, and disapproval from anyone doesn't make you any lesser. And you just need to stick to creating a culture of transformation and staying true to your values, because if you are untrue to yourself, then you can never really be able to be true to people around you, and you'll not be able to do justice to the work you are doing. So trust your intuition. So that brings us to an end of self awareness. And we'll now cover a little bit of relationship management, which I told you is at the surface. So most probably, the most important part of the session was self-awareness, which I told you is the core of EI. And you need to commit yourself to being a more self-aware person by following whatever you are doing, continuing with it, and probably that 1 hour of commitment for your own self. 1 out of 24 is 4.16%. So that is something you can definitely give to your own self. So coming to relationship management, again, there's a activity. There'll be a few questions. You can note these questions down, and whenever you have time, you can reflect upon these questions, and they will help you in managing your relationships better. So this is, yeah, you have something to say, Avinash?
Yeah, Arti, I'm just worry about the time. So we have 10
Yeah.
more minutes. So if
Okay.
you could share those questions, and then people can
Yeah,
go
sure.
back to their answers based on their
Yeah.
available time. I think it would be
Mm-hmm.
a good exercise for them to do that as well.
Yeah.
Um, I think for all the participants, I don't know if, how many questions do we have, Arti?
We have 7 questions.
Okay, excellent. So it would be difficult for writing it down all the seven. So I
Okay.
think if you could share these questions, I will be
Okay.
able to share them on the group.
Pay.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then with individuals for them to answer, just in the interest
Yes.
of time, because
Yeah.
people then okay.
Yeah.
Right. So one question that I think, in the interest of time, as we move towards the end of the session, one question that we have from Mr. Anand is that for our physical health, we follow a fitness regime. In the similar
Mm-hmm.
way, what can we do on a regular basis to improve upon our EQ? And if there are any simple steps. So while we mentioned that some of the things like asking ourselves those 4 5 questions that you gave earlier, what are you thinking, what are you feeling, how are your emotions, and what do you want now, and why do you want to do it, is one takeaway for me, wherein in any given circumstances, these are a few questions that I would ask, and the answers would again let me question my beliefs and see what are the cultural associations to it, and if I may change them to change the situation. Any other small steps that you think that we could use in everyday life to summarize on how emotional intelligence can be used in practical ways?
Yeah. So as you said, we can definitely practice that emotional auditing thing. And self-talk is something which really helps. So just as you maintain a fitness regime, what you can also have is you fix an time for yourself. Just consider it as so we don't are not able to follow it religiously. What you can think of it as like, suppose you have an appointment with a friend or a meeting with a friend, you are definitely going to give that time. So fix a particular time, even if it's 5 minutes, 15 minutes. Start with 5 minutes, then 15, and then 30. Make sure that you are giving that 30 minutes to yourself, and then you can practice affirmations. You can, along with visualization, when you are doing affirmations, make sure that whatever you are thinking, you are also feeling the same. So if you are creating a thought that I am a powerful being, feel that power in yourself, feel that power radiating to your relationship, feel that power being there at your workplace, being shown in your workplace. So that is something that you can practice. But what I would suggest is, just as you maintain a fitness regime, as you said, make sure that you also flex your brain muscle by fixing an appointment and being true to it, like one particular time of the day, like 5 o'clock, from 5 to 5:10. This is time for myself and I am going to do it. And we all know that you do something for at least you start with a week, you are able to do it for a week, and then do it for one more week, and 21 days a habit is formed. So just stick to that one thing, 5 or 10 minutes, and do whatever you are practicing right now. It's affirmations or self-talk, and it would help.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that quick this thing, Arti. There's one more question from
Yeah.
Deepti. Any suggestions to maintain the compass of rational thinking?
Suggestions to maintain the compass of rational thinking. Yeah, so they are almost the same that I shared before, that you need to accept what you are getting from the emotional mind, and you need to acknowledge more and start doing more of what your rational mind says. So, for example, if out of 5 days, currently your behavior is such that 3 days you continue to sleep and 2 days you get up, make it 4 days. 4 times you are doing what your rational mind wants you to do, and being able to distinguish, first important thing is being able to distinguish from where that is coming, the counter thoughts, and whether it is my rational mind or whether it is my emotional mind will definitely help. So being able to recognize and then being able to apply will definitely flex your both the brains.
Excellent. Right. Hope that answers these question. Thank you. Right. So as we sum up in the last 5 minutes, any other questions that we might have for Aarti? And Aarti, from your side, if we could just summarize the entire thing, and we can then go towards the end of the session.
Yeah, so as I told you, the core of EI is self-awareness, and we really need to work on that. And I would really want to just emphasize on the thing that you need to, if you had to take some few things from this session, one would be that you need to give yourself that time, be generous to yourself. Being grateful only is not going to help. Being generous to your physical body, to your emotional mind, and fix that particular time. As I told you, 1 out of 24 hours is just 4.16%. And don't you think we deserve that much? Because we are going to witness something known as a behavioral disaster wave. And to protect ourselves from being a victim of that, it is something that we need to work on. So, commitment of that. And as Avinash had pointed out, that 90% of our conversations, communication is our own self talk. And in that 10-15 minutes or 30 minutes that you fix for yourself, working on that self talk will definitely help.
Excellent. That was really a wonderful session, Aarti, and I really thank you for the time and to be made available for sharing those wonderful thoughts. As we see in the chat also, people have liked the personal anecdotes that you have shared, and for the VUCA world that you mentioned. So thank you again, and we hope to connect with you again. We will share this recording of the presentation and also tag Aarti for that. Please feel free to directly connect with Aarti. Any last thoughts before we end the session? Please feel free to put it on the chat or just unmute yourself and share it with us. If not, then we are good to end the session with a lot of thanks to Aarti, and hope to see you again soon.
Yeah, thank you, Avinash. And I'm really thankful and grateful to you for inviting me. And to all the participants, I thank you and applaud your commitment, because only when we start doing things. And I would just suggest that just start with one thing. It can be anything that you have always wanted to. As I told you already, into the 6th month of 2020, just start with the activity, because every activity has something known as an activation energy. Start with it and give the task the activation energy, and make sure that the task which is pending on your to-do list is ticked off very soon as possible. And thank you once again. I hope all of you all stay physically safe and psychologically sane as well. And thank you, everyone.
Excellent. Thank you, guys, and see you soon on the next session, next Saturday at 9:30 a.m. on AD's Coaching. Till then, bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.